Well, good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We're broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. I'm so glad that you've joined us this morning. A little bit later on in the program, we're going to be talking to Raphael Grigorian. He has a performance with his ballet theater, a performance of the Nutcracker coming up at the Clemens Center next Saturday, Saturday, December 7th. So we're going to be talking with him a little bit later on. Also on tomorrow's program, we're going to be talking about Sparkle, which is coming up very soon, and the Crystal City Christmas. Crystal City Christmas. Mouthful there. They have Small Business Saturday coming up this Saturday. Okay. A couple of comments from viewers. First of all, thank you to everybody who's been sending me pictures from their hunting. I've got some really nice pictures of some pretty impressive bucks, so thank you very much. Also, to the viewer, and I understand, I was confused by this at one point as well, and I did some research. The Three Stooges had a ad during their broadcast about the NRA, but it's not the NRA that we think of, the National Rifle Association. It was actually the National Recovery Administration during FDR's terms. That was one of the programs that was offered. So it's not the same thing, but yes, Donald Trump was endorsed by the National Rifle Association. That question was asked, and yes, he was. And if you are a member of the NRA, they will send you endorsements of your local candidates as well. Oh, well, congressional, down to congressional. Okay. Just getting started here, folks. Let's get right to it. You know, we've talked about government overreach. We've talked about how important it is to know who you're voting for locally, because locally can affect your life more so than even the presidential race or the senatorial race or congressional race. And, you know, we've talked about Mayor Henyard out of Illinois, who has been labeled as corrupt, allegedly. But this is one that I know that we talked about a little bit last week. Someone wrote in and mentioned this case, and I don't think we talked about it too in depth, but a Georgia mother of four has been arrested, and she was arrested in front of her children because she allowed her 10-year-old son to walk home alone last month. Well, she's not taking this sitting down. She is using her newfound profile to make the case for free-range parents and their kids everywhere. Can you imagine this? Getting arrested for allowing your 10-year-old to walk home by themselves. Brittany Patterson, who's 41, was taken into custody and slapped with child endangerment-related charges by the Fannin County Sheriff's Department on October the 30th. She's been ruthlessly fighting back ever since, including refusing to accept a plea deal. She's not taking this lying down. Patterson appeared on Fox and Friends Weekend with her lawyer to share her experience and her next steps in this crusade for what she calls free-range parenting. Quote, "It's definitely been a little traumatizing. My kids have never seen anything like that or been exposed to anything like that. So really, their first encounter with police or law enforcement is to see them taking their mother out of their home in handcuffs. I think that was pretty traumatizing," she said. Patterson's son, Soren, who was 10 years old at the time, had ventured less than a mile away into the town before Halloween. He did not ask his mother's permission, but Patterson said that she probably would have allowed him to do it even if he had asked. Sheriff's deputies later spotted Soren's wandering through town close to the North Carolina border and called Patterson to let her know where he was. At the time, Patterson was tied up at the doctor's office with one of her other sons. Deputies drove Soren home and returned later that day and arrested Patterson in front of her family. Law enforcement officials have since suggested that they will drop the charges against Patterson if she agrees to put a GPS tracker on her son's phone so she can track him. Is that a little bit of overstepping? Is that really the police's responsibility to demand someone put a GPS tracker on their child's phone. This has not been officially written or verbally offered, Patterson told Fox and Friends Weekend, but only vaguely hinted at. Quote, the irony here, too, is that the next day was Halloween, where kids walk often without their parents, door to door, in the dark, and knock on the doors of strangers. And yet Soren was in the middle of the day, just walking down the street, not a tenth of a mile away, her lawyer said. Her arrest sparked a wider conversation about the government's role and control over parenting and what exactly a free-range household can look like without authorities stepping in. Quote, the reality is, as parents, we should have that autonomy, whether we want to wrap our kids in bubble wrap or whether we want to give our kids a little more freedom and autonomy. It should be our decision as parents and not the decision of some government authority who doesn't even know our kids or know our family. So that's just an update. Again, we talk about the importance of knowing the local rules, the local... Sorry, I got a lot of noises going on here in the background. We also have another story that kind of ties in with this government overreach. We talk about in New York State and the government control. In New York State, we have actually a couple of examples of that. But listen to this, just something to keep in mind. Maybe we should be looking at this in New York State. Rural counties in California and Illinois are pushing to secede from blue states to separate from liberal-run cities after Trump's win. They've had enough of movement in some rural counties across deep blue states such as Illinois and California to split off and form new states appears to be gaining some steam in the wake of the November 5th election. Conservative residents of the rural regions are taking notes of their peers fleeing to lower taxed and less regulated red states, but they're ready to stay put, pinning for a divorce with the urban sector of their state. Now, this has been talked about extensively in New York State for years, but never really gaining that traction. But a group dubbed the New Illinois State has drafted a new constitution and championed plans to, quote, leave Illinois without moving. On Election Day, 7 rural counties in Illinois voted to contemplate splitting off from the state. There's a lot of people in Chicago, and I think they make a lot of decisions that affect people downstate, said an Iroquois County resident. It's just sending a message that, hey, there's people that would like to be part of the conversation and often aren't. In Iroquois County, about 73% of voters back the idea of banding together with other counties in Illinois, except Cook County, which encompasses Chicago, and forming a new state. Chicago is home to about 40% of Illinois' population. While this resident doesn't anticipate a separation soon, some backers of a rural divorce think that an opening will come. Quote, we always believed that our best opportunity to negotiate our way out of Illinois was when Illinois was approaching the financial cliff. It's been on a path toward it for years, said G.H. Merritt, who chairs New Illinois State. Out in California, a similar movement has taken root. The New California State organization hopes to splinter off the counties outside the Bay Area, Sacramento, and Los Angeles. Paul Preston bashed the Golden State to the New York Post as, quote, one-party communist state, and technically they have seceded from the Union already. But his and other like-minded movements face an uphill battle. To win statehood, they would need the green light from state legislatures, difficult to lock down from the state where they'd like to splinter off. Hawaii was the last state formally added to the U.S. There have been efforts by Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C. to attain statehood, but none of them have garnered much steam. So just kind of an update, and maybe sparking the idea here in New York State. We've talked about it so often of seceding from New York City. And if you look at the inroads made by Donald Trump and Republicans for the last few years, there is a conservative movement in New York State. But again, being drowned out, but not as much as in the past, being drowned out by the city. Speaking of New York, yeah, we're covering a lot this morning. We're going to be going through a lot. Speaking of New York, we have a couple of updates. We're also going to talk about Trump's transition team, Trump's cabinet. I think, if I'm not mistaken, he's pretty much filled every cabinet position. There may be one or two, but I actually think he's completely done. There's a few negative reactions from the media, as should be no surprise, from his cabinet. We're also going to talk a little bit here about some New York issues, but also some Harris topics. A few things, a few updates on Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. All that coming up in just a little bit. And as I mentioned, we're going to be talking with Mr. Gregorian about the upcoming performance of the Nutcracker at the Clemens Center. That's coming up on Saturday, December 7th at 2 p.m. So he'll be on here in a couple more segments. So stay with us. We got to take our first break. This is Frankly Speaking here at WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact Boss Security today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking as we broadcast live from the Hesselson's studio. So an update on New York and the legalization of marijuana. New York is feeling sky high, according to the New York Post, as sales near $1 billion since the launch of the legal market. That's not to mention all the illegal dealers out there. New York is set to hit the $1 billion mark in cannabis sales since the legal market launched just 2 years ago. These numbers clearly indicate that New York is open for business. There's strong momentum behind the market right now, said the policy director for the state's Office of Cannabis Management. We can talk about them and the job that they're doing. But New York is open for business. What a weird way of putting that. Pot sales hit $863.9 million as of last week, and they could top the $1 billion mark by the end of December, is what regulators are saying. The state surpassed $500 million in sales back in August. The market has ramped in recent months after a rocky rollout, yes, marred by lawsuits, a massive illegal market, and enormous backlogs in the awarding of retail licenses issued by the often criticized and understaffed and overwhelmed OCM, Office of Cannabis Management. The turmoil and hiccups delayed the state's timeline to develop the new legal market for marijuana. Governor Hochul ordered a management shakeup after a scathing report she commissioned in May issued blunt criticism of how the regulatory agency was run, and 64 new staffers were hired. OCM currently employs 213 full-time workers. There are now 245 licensed retail weed outlets, which is up from 41 at the end of 2023. So just at the end of last year, just 41 legal distributors, now 245 licensed retail marijuana outlets. Retail sales of weed have generated $22 million in combined tax revenue for local governments, including $7.9 million to New York City, according to State Comptroller Tom DiNapoli's office. We're going to talk about Tom DiNapoli here in just a moment. More than $16.6 million in tax revenue from the pot business also flowed to the state's treasury through June and is on pace to double last year's total. They've beefed up, according to the Office of Cannabis Management, enforcement and the padlocking of illegal pot shops under a new law approved by Hochul and the state legislature. They had a big and immediate impact on boosting the bottom line of licensed cannabis retailers. Sales more than doubled, soaring 105% among cannabis retailers that were in business before Operation Padlock took place in the spring and afterward. Hochul's office claimed the pot market is now reaching new highs. Quote, thanks to Governor Hochul's leadership, more than 1,000 illegal dispensaries have been shut down, and the legal market, nearing $1 billion in sales, is booming, said Hochul spokesman Miguel Arola. Thanks to Governor Hochul's leadership. Her policies have helped transform the industry, increasing revenues for local businesses and spur reinvestments in the communities most harmed by historical wrongs, all while building the most equitable cannabis market in the nation. But social justice advocates complain that too few licenses have gone to operators in communities disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs when marijuana was considered a crime. 5% of those set aside for the equity market and 2.5% overall. Enough on that. So there's your update. Looking at a recent study said it could support 1,000 new pot stores in New York. The LeafLink report shows New York is a cellar dweller compared to other states that have legalized cannabis. Oklahoma, for example, has 1,900 licensed pot shops. New York currently has 245. So there is your New York State update. And we mentioned Tom DiNapoli, and that Tom DiNapoli was in the area on Friday. Went over and watched his speech on the state of Corning in the city of Corning. New York State's Comptroller Thomas DiNapoli visited the city of Corning to deliver a detailed economic and fiscal profile for the city. The presentation was held at the local 1000 Steelworkers Union building in Corning, where a large crowd of community members, local officials, and regional leaders gathered to hear from the state comptroller. During his remarks, Comptroller DiNapoli highlighted Corning's position as an economic powerhouse in the southern tier, largely due to the presence of Corning Incorporated, one of the region's largest employers. He emphasized the city's financial health, noting that strong fund balances and impressive fiscal management in recent years. For 2023, Corning's available general fund balance as a percentage of gross expenditures was 14.7%, including a solid fiscal foundation. Furthermore, the city's outstanding debt stood at approximately $8.6 million, which represents a significant reduction of 40.5% since 2013. So there you are. Steuben County officials, including Kelly Fitzpatrick, our friend here on the program, chair of the Steuben County Legislature, was also present for the event. Fitzpatrick commended the city's strong financial position and expressed optimism for continued growth and prosperity in the region. Wow, we're covering everything this morning, folks. We're going to talk here in just a little bit about Trump's recent cabinet picks. After this break, we are going to be talking with Mr. Gregorian. He's got the upcoming performance with his ballet theater of the Nutcracker. You may recall I had him on quite some time ago when they were presenting, Cinderella, I believe. So we're going to talk to him here coming up after this break. That performance of the Nutcracker is at the Clemens Center on December the 7th at 2 p.m. And you can find out more at clemenscenter.org. That's clemenscenter.org. And as I mentioned, tomorrow on the program, we're going to be talking with the Gaffer District about the upcoming Crystal City Christmas events, because this Saturday is Small Business Saturday. Already amazing. Then there's going to be the Parade of Lights on November the 30th, the same day. And then, of course, Sparkle Christmas, celebrating 50 years. That will be on December 7th as well. So it's a busy couple weeks coming up. If you went to the craft fair with our friends from the Crystal Chords, I'd love to hear from you. What did you think? Did you get all your Christmas shopping done? We talked with Joe Barlow last week about their Holiday Craft and Vendor Fair, which was over the weekend, but they also have their Christmas performance coming up on December 17th. And we're going to hear from Joe Barlow later on, actually during the Salvation Army Telethon, which, by the way, that is coming up on the 13th. And we have some really exciting news that we'll get to a little bit later on to promote about how big of an event it is going to be this year. But it is going to be a fun time. So make sure you tune in. Mark your calendar already. Get your checkbook out as well for the Salvation Army Telethon on December the 13th. We're going to have a lot of great music, performances, interviews. We're really looking forward to that, and I'll tell you about the big news a little bit later on. But I forgot a couple waves here. And right now we got to take a break. But when we come back, we're going to hear from Mr. Gregorian. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Aiken. We're broadcasting from the Hesselson studio, and this is the Steuben Senior Services Fund section of our program. And I want to welcome back our guest, Mr. Gregorian. Thanks so much for being on the program.
Thank you, too.
And I know you're very busy right now because you've got the Nutcracker coming up. In your career, how many times do you think you've put on the Nutcracker?
Oh, it's hard to say. Many. I already had it for 4 years.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Wow. I was going to ask you your background. How long have you been involved with your ballet theater?
How long? Probably almost first year we start to do when I open school, and with advance of parents, and my decision was to do that. And we decided to open, and like I said, our first Nutcracker was with orchestra.
Wow. Isn't that interesting? How long have you been yourself involved in ballet?
Me? Almost entire my life.
Really? Really? Is it still exciting for you?
Very much.
Yeah.
Very much.
What's it feel like as you get ready to put on? Because you're going to be at the Clemens Center on Saturday, December 7th, and at Binghamton at the Forum Theater on the 8th. What does it feel like as you near those dates?
Nervous, but good nervous.
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
or nervous, because like I said, first of all, it's almost every year it's many new
Yeah.
young people,
Yeah.
yes, and it's very joyful, you know. It makes me feel young, first of all,
Sure.
because I'm surrounded many young people,
Right.
which is not bad to feel young.
Right.
Yes, and happy children, happy children, because I always say the children little bit miss freedom
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
I believe. I remember my generation, we play outside and scream, and now
Yeah.
unfortunately, in my view, telephone little bit substitute childhood.
Very
I
much.
think, right. And when I see children, so many children laughing, screaming,
Yeah.
loud, I even tell parents, let them be free.
Right.
You
Right.
know?
Yeah.
And teach them discipline when you need things that it's needed. Yes, but for me, it's very, and I still feel myself much younger
Oh, sure.
by being around them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because they're sweet young people.
Well, when they're getting ready to perform the Nutcracker, do you find that younger people are excited or are they nervous?
I believe more. I don't believe that they're nervous, you know, because we do every year,
Yeah.
right? And we do different productions.
Yeah.
They kind of became professionals.
They're
let's
pros.
say like that. Yes.
They could do the Nutcracker in their sleep.
They're very sound,
Yeah.
and happy, very
Yeah.
happy, and it probably make out a little bit nervous.
Sure.
They're more excitement than nervous.
Yeah. How much work goes into a production? When a student begins, I mean, it's really their whole career is building up to performances like this, correct?
But we do not start, you know, like couple months ahead.
Okay.
No, we start rehearsing in October.
Oh, okay.
Right, and in November, I mean, close to the show, it's that we try to polish more, and I always give myself chance in case if I don't satisfied with some work or I don't like what I did, like example,
Sure.
in my choreography, because children different, I would like to present them, not
Yeah.
myself,
Right.
them.
Right.
I try to, but when they're ready, some addition, let's change this, let's try this,
Yeah.
let's try. And it's make me fun and for them.
Yeah. How long is a typical practice?
How long
Or
time?
rehearsal, I should say, yeah.
We do usually Saturday, Sundays,
Oh,
2
okay.
days.
Okay. Is it almost all day?
Sunday usually we start when close to the show. It's Saturdays,
Okay.
but close the show we start to do Saturday and Sunday. It's not all day, like from 12 o'clock we do warm up,
Yeah.
and probably we're planning 5:30, 7, 6, but usually it go up, especially because young ones go earlier, older
Sure.
girls, people stay longer.
Yeah. How many students are involved?
I don't know. I cannot tell exactly how many.
Well, ballpark of to put on the Nutcracker.
30
Oh, wow,
some.
really? Wow. If someone's interested in joining your theater, how does that process work?
Audition, well,
Just
most audition.
Yeah.
Right. Everyone who would like to be part, welcome.
Okay, we've got the website on the bottom of the screen, and when we have the Nutcracker coming up at the Clemens Center on the 7th and the Forum Theater at the 8th, what are the age groups that are involved in it?
Oh, we have, and definitely children who go to school.
Okay,
not
so that age.
kindergarten level, but we have a lot of. I call them star of the show.
Oh yeah. Well, that's amazing. A cast of 30. Is it the same? And this is maybe a naive question. Is it the same people that are performing in Elmira are playing in Binghamton too?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So they have 2 shows then.
Two
All this
shows,
work
right.
for 2 shows, and everybody's getting excited now, getting ready to perform. What's it like on the production day?
What like on production? Excitement.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah. What I guess if someone doesn't know, and I mean the Nutcracker is maybe one of the most famous parts of the holiday. Everybody knows the
Yes.
Nutcracker. Tell us a little bit about the Nutcracker for those that aren't aware.
Nutcracker, it's it's holiday, but I usually, many people maybe know, maybe not. For Tchaikovsky composer, it's sad ballet.
Oh, okay.
It's sad ballet. I always call this is his dream of happiness.
Okay.
And why it's a lot of children, and for he probably want to have life.
Yeah.
Little bit jealous.
Yeah.
That him in his life, it's not what's happening. It's like what he tried to present in this ballet.
Oh,
Right.
interesting.
It's for children. Yes, for give for children. How I need to explain it, and it's good lesson. Yes, why this girl choose this maybe not very beautiful
Yeah.
toy. It's, you understand, girls usually choose baby, I don't know,
Yeah.
beautiful dress.
Yeah.
Probably again to show character of give some example for child, not
Yeah.
necessarily something very beautiful.
Sure.
Can be very good.
Interesting.
Yes, it's in my opinion. In my opinion, this is was reason for Tchaikovsky to do this.
Oh, interesting.
Yes.
Now you do productions throughout, not of the Nutcracker, but you do productions throughout the year, correct?
Yes.
What goes into the choice of what you're going to present?
Why? Can you repeat it?
Sure. How do you pick what you're going to present and have your students involved in?
Okay, I tried to do like we did Romeo and Juliet,
Right.
for acts Prokofiev ballet. Because I have teenagers.
Okay.
Romeo and Juliet
Yeah.
for teenagers
Sure.
too. I try to. I would like to introduce to children first of all music I love, right, and try to create story that of course it will be relate to the children, to young people, and give in any productions I'm looking for not just entertainment. We have enough entertainment. We need educational productions too.
I agree. Now, when you mentioned that you feel younger while you're doing all this, right? What does it feel like after the last performance is over for you?
Very happy.
Very happy.
Very very happy for them.
Students? Yeah, I believe it. So before we go, it's at the Clemens Center, Nutcracker that is, the Clemens Center on Saturday, December 7th. You can find out more at clemenscenter.org, and the Forum Theater in Binghamton, on the 8th at Broome Arena Forum. Is that your website the best place to find out more?
I think so.
Yeah, and then can they purchase tickets there? Or do they go directly to Clemens Center?
To Clemens Center, yes.
or Broome Arena Forum.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much. Best of luck, and I hope we can have you on next year for the Nutcracker.
Thank you very, very much.
All
Best
right.
wishes, happy Thanksgiving, and happy New Year.
You too.
Okay,
All right,
thank
we'll be
you
right
very
back
much.
with Frankly Speaking.
Yes.
Stay with us. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security and Horseheads. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs. Thank you again to Mr. Gregorian for being on the program this morning during the Steuben Senior Services Fund section of our program. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. It is a shortened week. We will not be in on Thursday or Friday, so make sure you get your comments in now so that you have a couple of days where you can't comment on the topics of the day. So make sure you start commenting now. Hey, by the way, Matt Gaetz, this is weird. I don't know why this is a common thing now in politics. Ex-Florida congressman, and he said he will not, even though he won, he will not be joining Congress next session. He was a one-time U.S. Attorney General hopeful. Matt Gaetz, he has launched a Cameo account where he's raking in cash by cutting videos for the public. Now, we know there's some scandal involved with Matt Gaetz, and we're going to talk about some of the selections that, they're trying to push this idea that the Trump cabinet is controversial. That's the term that they use. Of course, controversial. They also use loyalist. Trump wants loyalists around him. No, I would think so. As one viewer said after Friday's program, the ultra loyal term. What, would the left prefer those that are not loyal? Yes, they probably actually would. But Matt Gaetz, he is charging, get this, $525 plus for every Cameo video. If you're not familiar with Cameo, celebrities will send maybe birthday wishes to someone or wishing them a happy anniversary, something like that. And you pay, and they can be very cheap, or they can be, depending on the name, very expensive. You may remember Santos. George Santos was doing them for a time. But yes, Matt Gaetz charging up to $525. But he does enjoy a 5-star rating on the platform where users can pay for videos from famous celebrities. Quote, now listen, I may not be the Attorney General, the most powerful law enforcement officer in the land for now, he said. We actually got a great one in Pam Bondi. And so I can't order predator strikes on my enemies as much as I would like to for now, he said jokingly, but I can order you to have as much fun as possible. Gaetz later clarified that he was pretty sure attorney generals can't actually order predator drone strikes on their enemies anyway. The Sunshine State Republican, who has denied any wrongdoing in the allegations against him, was initially tapped by Trump to serve as attorney general. You're familiar with all of that. He is now listed as unemployed, but he apparently has been earning at least some of his keep on Cameo. In one clip on the site, Gaetz wished happy holidays to someone named Lisa, presumably for a price. I know you were bummed out when the news broke that I wouldn't be the attorney general. Also say hello to your mother, Carol, for me. Oh, that's nice. There you go. So Matt Gaetz, for those that were worried, he's doing just fine. Oh, by the way, did you see that The View, we've been talking about the media so often here on Frankly Speaking, but the host of ABC's The View were forced to issue 4, quote, legal notes in just one episode regarding comments they made about several of President-elect Donald Trump's cabinet picks. Co-hosts Sonny Hoiston and Joy Behar were forced to issue legal notes after comments made during an episode about allegations surrounding Matt Gaetz. The View co-host also issued a legal note over comments made about former New York Republican Representative George Santos. The legal notes made during the episode came after comments made by co-host Ana Navarro, Sarah Haynes, former Trump administration official Alyssa, Farah, Griffin, Hostin, and Barr. After Barr made a comment about Santos's 23 criminal charges for wire fraud, money laundering, and making fake statements to the House of Representatives, Barr was faced with making a legal note saying, quote, I just got a note. We have to clarify that Santos eventually reached a plea deal after pleading guilty to wire fraud and aggravated identity theft. And then Hoiston saying, I have a legal note. Matt Gaetz has long denied all allegations and has not been charged with any crime. Also, another legal note, Hoiston continued. Pete Hegseth's lawyer said he paid the woman in 2023 to head off the threat of a baseless lawsuit. He has denied any wrongdoing. And then just minutes later, Hoiston revealed that she had another legal note. Quote, I'm sorry, everyone, I have another legal note. Both Trump and Pam Bondi have denied allegations of a quid pro quo that his past donation played any role in her office's decision to not take legal action against Trump University when she was the Attorney General of Florida. The show is just going to be legal notes, and things were selling, Navarro responded. Hey, by the way, did you see Joe Rogan? Joe Rogan became kind of a very important, we got to take a break, a very important part of this election. Some continue to blame Harris's loss, not on what actually was the cause, but on the fact that she wouldn't go on programs like Rogan. And I had read that 70 million people watched Rogan and Trump, their interview. 70 million. Now, the podcast that Harris attended, for lack of a better word, which was Call Her Daddy, received 8 million views, which still is a very impressive number, 8 million views. But compared to Rogan's, I was shocked. 70 million views. Well, Joe Rogan asked Elon Musk, if Elon Musk buys MSNBC, yes, there are talks that maybe Musk will step in and buy MSNBC, which would be hilarious. Joe Rogan said he'll take Rachel Maddow's job. Now, Rachel Maddow receiving, this was shocking to me. I'm still, I think about it probably too much. Rachel Maddow was making $30 million a year. She had to take a pay cut because MSNBC is struggling. She's now making $25 million a year, and she does a show one day a week. $25 million. And she does a show on Monday. Well, this is what Rogan had to say on his show. If you buy MSNBC, meaning he's talking to Elon Musk, I would like Rachel Maddow's job. I will wear the same outfit and glasses, and I will tell the same lies. Now, Comcast on Wednesday officially announced that it would spin off several NBC Universal cable networks, including MSNBC, in a move that will dramatically shake up the landscape of legacy media. as a liberal cable outlet will no longer be affiliated with NBC News. That means they'll lose their reporters, their commentators. The billionaire captioned the post with his own statement, writing, quote, "The most entertaining outcome, especially if ironic, is most likely having fun with the idea of buying the liberal outlet and converting it to a conservative news outlet." Rogan commented on Musk's new post with his offer to replace Maddow on the new MSNBC. He said, "Deal. Some conservatives found the idea exciting and hilarious. Many saying, please let this happen." Conservative author Jim Hansen commented, "Can you imagine the freak out level on the left right now? They know Elon could do this on a whim." Yeah, I mean, that's essentially what happened when he bought Twitter, right? Just on a whim. Bought it and changed it to X. Now he could be. Think of that. Elon Musk buying MSNBC. Could you imagine a day where you would, as a conservative, tune into MSNBC for your nightly news? That looks possible at this point. Author Carol Roth mentioned ABC's liberal talk show, The View, in her comments, saying, "I'd like to throw my hat in the ring for a panelist spot on the Normal View." The MSNBC host, whose show, The Rachel Maddow Show, airs on the networks on Monday, recently signed a new contract to stay with the company for the foreseeable future. This comes as the network's ratings have plummeted, including ratings for her show, especially since Trump won earlier this month. I'm not going to go through all the numbers. Musk mused about buying the liberal network in another post on Friday, stating, "MSNBC is going up for sale. Should I buy it? I would like to fire Rachel Maddow for fun and then turn it into a channel that reports the top stories from X each day. Citizen reporting on cable news." Musk played with the idea even more on Sunday morning, posting a meme depicting him trying to fight the temptation of buying MSNBC. Oh, that is going to be interesting. Crazy times we're living in. All right, we got to take a short break. No, look at the waves coming in. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. We're going to talk about Kamala Harris's bid for the White House and that $1.5 billion price tag for a failed presidential run. Again, it seems as if the left has not learned the lessons of why they lost, and we're going to talk about that as well. So stay with us. We've got to take a short break. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back after this. Speaking of Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. Comment from a viewer: "I think it's a good idea for Musk to buy MSNBC. Then he could call it XNBC. I like that idea. That's a very good idea. Boy, that would be fun, wouldn't it? Finally, a legacy network for our side." Good point. I like it. All right. Now, this is from the New York Post editorial board, and I thought this was really a fair point and something that we've mentioned on this program. There's actually a couple of stories this morning that I feel like the New York Post and other somewhat conservative outlets may just be watching, frankly speaking, every morning to get their ideas. But this is coming from the Post editorial board. Kamala Harris spent $1.5 billion on her failed presidential campaign, hemorrhaging on average $100 million per week, proving that she and her campaign, are as bad at managing money as they are at generating coherent policy ideas. The big ticket items: $900,000 to advertise on the outside screen of the Las Vegas Sphere. And she ended up losing Nevada, by the way. A cool $1 million to Oprah Winfrey's Harpo Productions for Harris's splashy town hall event with the media queen. $10 million for a series of Gen X bait conferences with the likes of John Bon Jovi. Harris ended up losing Gen X. And $494 million on overall advertising. $500 million on overall advertising. Kamala was so desperate to seem like she had something to say, she paid big names to talk to her. Her campaign handed over $500,000 to Reverend Al Sharpton's National Action Network ahead of her sit-down on MSNBC, a move that stinks to high heaven and should, though it won't, utterly wreck the rep of the American answer to Pravda, meaning MSNBC. And she paid another sketchy news personality, Roland Martin, who's alleged to have helped leak a town hall question to Hillary Clinton's camp back in 2016, some $350,000 via his New Vision Media ahead of her sit-down on his streaming show. The Washington Free Beacon revealed the Sharpton payment. Many of those other details come from a gloomy New York Times report on the Harris disaster. Days late and $1.5 billion short, but still, America's lucky the gray lady didn't do more to vet Kamala before her ascent. Otherwise, Trump might have faced a genuine threat. But the big spend on bribing Sharpton for a sit-down and Winfrey to borrow her for effortless mass appeal and Bon Jovi to buy cultural cred and on and on and on reveals one of the central problems with Harris's campaign. It was hollow and fake from the start, right down to the creepy Stalinist cry of joy taken by the lapdogs at the Times and elsewhere. Trump was clearly the one having fun, zipping around the country, doing his trademark shuffle, and letting fly one-liners as Harris stumbled and fumbled and mumbled, and her army of enforcers on social media and in the press screeched about how amazing and wonderful and perfect she was. And despite having every major media outlet pulling for her, she didn't have what it takes. Yeah, you think about $1.5 billion being spent, but think of all the free advertisements she got. And think of all the positive coverage she received on, 99% of the media, in the media. Either in personality or policy, money matters plenty in campaigns, but it can't make up for having no real message and a candidate with zero credibility. Worse yet, for the Democrat Party's future, it may have taught its donors to think twice before giving a dime to the apparatus that burns cash so incredibly cluelessly. And think of how she would have spent as president and your tax dollars. $1.5 billion. And we learned that she was, $20 million in debt even after that. Now, Joe Biden did bid his donors farewell at what they're calling the last hurrah at the White House. President Biden jokingly urged a room full of Democrat donors and insiders not to jump in the White House pool at a weekend dinner to thank them before he leaves office. But some attendees still felt all wet after the election. Quote, "Good evening, everyone. If you have a seat, please take it. Don't jump in the pool," Biden said to laughs at the black tie party. First Lady Jill Biden and I are hosting this dinner tonight for a very simple reason: to say thank you. Thank you to so many of my dear friends. This was from a video on C-SPAN. We began this journey to redeem the soul of the nation and to find the light in the darkness, and I never could have gotten to where the White House has become without you. And we never could have gotten as much done as we did without you. And that's not hyperbole. I mean it from the bottom of my heart. We hear the guests include big donors in Biden's cabinet, as well as friends and others who have been supportive of the Bidens through the years. Former and current ambassadors came in for the elite event. Spotted among the crowd was former Democrat vice presidential nominee Governor Tim Walz and his wife Gwen, who were chatting with Secretary of Commerce Gina Raimondo. One source said the donors, who'd given $250,000 and up and skipped the bash, insiders who were invited and didn't go are calling it the, quote, losers party, said one source. Many said they didn't want to be associated with the Democrats right now because of the embarrassing loss to Donald Trump in the election and anger over the $1.5 billion spent on a campaign that failed. Yes, I could see, you donate all that money to a campaign and you see all the cushy interviews and pro-Harris news stories, and you still couldn't win. The joy, remember that? That's what we heard, the momentum. She has the momentum. But another attendee described the event as a real love fest, adding it was, of course, sad, but also just a real sense of appreciation for the Bidens. It was absolutely gorgeous. Weirdly, it was also fun, like a last hurrah. There were also musical performances. Biden gave praise to Jill, but did not mention Trump or the election. He said, "Our cause endures." So the last hurrah at the White House. We've got a couple other stories we're going to get to. Boy, this show's going quick, isn't it? I see some comments coming in. We'll read those when we come back. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Thank you again to Boss Security and Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. A little foggy out there, as you can see. The view changed a little bit with the wind, but we'll change it back soon enough. But I kind of like this view. See a little bit of the Rockwell Museum and a little bit of the street. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. Ken wrote in. Ken, good morning, Ken. Thanks for sending this message. Did you see that New York has approved the congestion tolls for vehicles entering Manhattan? So soon, every time someone drives into Manhattan, they will have to pay $9. I guess they can leave for free. Obviously, New York City needs the money. Possibly they should stop housing illegals in $500 a night hotels. Yes, the money that they have spent is phenomenal. It is amazing. And it should shock because we're paying for it as well. I know it's the city, but we're paying for it just as much. if not more, unfortunately. But yes, $9 just to get into Manhattan, but it's free to, you can leave for free. I like it, Ken. You're absolutely right. All right. When we come back, because we got to wrap up, this hour is already through. I can't believe it. We've got a interesting piece by Julian Epstein saying, even after a Trump trouncing, the Democrats refuse to learn their lessons. We also have a couple things here about the media. We're going to talk about the Democrat Party in general. Marjorie Taylor Greene. Now, she's a part of Doge with Musk and Ramaswamy. She is doing what Republicans always hint at, but never seem to accomplish or never really seem to go all in on. I hope that because she is someone that doesn't give up, she's talking about going after NPR, and we're going to talk about that as well. Also, a few things here about the Trump cabinet that is pretty much, I think, completely wrapped up. I think he's not only found someone for each position, he went above and beyond and created things like Doge. But they're saying at the New York Post, and I would like to hear your thoughts on this, which is they're saying, let me find the exact quote because I don't want to, here we go. Trump just picked a total turkey to run his labor department. Representative Lori Chavez DeRemer is going to head the labor department. So what are your thoughts overall on the cabinet? I know we've had the conversation numerous times about are there any of his cabinet members, are you concerned? Because if you recall back in 2016, he had a lot of issues with leakers and whistleblowers and people that were not looking out for his best interest. Don Jr. saying he's picking people that don't think that they're smarter than the president, know better than the president. In the first go around, he did not necessarily do that. And I know there's been some concern, many people writing into the show saying that they were worried that he would make the same kind of poor decisions in hiring the people around him. I don't think that's the case this time around, but is there anybody that concerns you? Is there anybody that's extra special for you that you're very excited about? What are your thoughts overall on the Trump cabinet, which I believe, hearing on the news this morning, that it is full. There may be a spot left, but I'm not sure. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the Democrats in general, all of that and much more. So stay with us. Hour number 1 in the books. Hour number 2 coming up next. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. Hour number 2 of Frankly Speaking. Welcome as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. I'm so glad that you joined us this morning. Comment from a viewer. Do you think it is possible that Trump was telling the U.S. Senate with Matt Gaetz to see what he's up against? Interesting point. They show they will still do what they want to do, still do what they want to do, not be in unison like the Democrats are. Yeah, that could be a good point to see how, well, to use the media's term, loyal the Senate will be to him. Interesting point. Now, Julian Epstein writes for the New York Post, and he said the left's autopsy of its very predictable electoral defeat has become a comedy show. Joe Scarborough is on bended knee, licking the boots of an incoming president he is likened to Hitler. Nancy Pelosi, who first defended Biden's mental capacity before coldly whacking him, is now blaming him for Kamala Harris's loss. Activist journalists claim that Harris ran a perfect campaign and blame voters who gave up on democracy. Self-preening typifies much of what's wrong with the contemporary American left. It's a culture driven by its own self-indulgence and social credit scores rather than self-examination. Moral condensation and virtue signaling are its chief currency. Sociologist Musa Al-Gharbi's new book on the hypocrisy of the elites, quote, "We Have Never Been Woke," captures this bonfire of the vanities. Using immigration as an example, he points to the self-dealing of elites who, quote, "have disposable servants who will clean your house, watch your kids, walk your dogs, deliver prepared meals to you, but mask this all in sanctimonious virtue. Meanwhile, the migrant waves oversaturate labor markets, stealing working-class jobs and lower pay scales. For working Americans, this wealth transfer is yet another assault by the same liberal elites who drove the neoliberal consensus on free trade that enriched themselves, all while hollowing out working-class communities and transferring jobs abroad through unfair trade laws. Most workers lost real wages under the Biden administration. But the left, they cry bigotry when the working class and others object to this self-dealing. The college-educated get fat while expressing moral condensation. Yeah, that's weird. Towards anyone who questions their multiculturalism over nation pathos or their victimhood obsession. Pretty clever gig if you can get it. But Al-Ghrabi drills down on exactly why virtue signaling is so important to the elites. In a world where universities overproduce the sheer number of elites, it becomes the method by which elites try to differentiate themselves and distinguish, their higher social credit vis-a-vis their peers. Wokeness has become key, a source of cultural capital among contemporary elites, the author writes. That is perhaps why the post-modern deconstructionist left has adopted so many policies and cultural positions on crime, critical race, critical gender, climate, absolutism, the mimicry of river to the sea terrorist rhetoric that play to these insular needs of donors and activists, but alienate Democrats from most voters. Rather than reading the election results, Democrats seem to be doubling down. The Post this week reported that the White House is encouraging more migrant surges with, among other things, a glitchy ICE app that allows the 230,000 illegal migrants in New York and potentially millions elsewhere to merely check in with immigration officials online rather than in person. This is music to the ears of the criminal cartels who thrive on the promise of minimal in-country monitoring and ease of evasion. The Post also reports that the White House continues to battle Texas's efforts to fortify border barriers to deter the most imminent pre-inauguration migrant wave, yet another encouragement for the cartels. Democrats pontificated for the last 4 years on the virtues of democracy, yet seem to be defying the clearly expressed will of the voters in favor of the virtuous elites. One possible explanation is that they cynically believe an aggravated migrant crisis will complicate the incoming administration's cleanup efforts. How ironic would it be for the Trump administration to find the needed common ground on climate internationally to advance the issue? Elsewhere, the administration is slow-walking the needed offensive armaments to Ukraine and its approach to Israel, pledging support one day and then yet more virtue signaling, undermining Israel's efforts to root out the genocidal terrorists in places like Rafah, has also left the world more unstable and set a more favorable stage for Trump and his potential triumph on the world stage. And this is the point. Moral condescension, absent any meaningful factual backing, are not just pseudo-intellectualism, but because it is imperiously trying to shut down debate rather than discovering knowledge. It leaves its practitioners all the dumber. It may be the most important autopsy lesson the left could learn from the election. And Michael Goodwin writes that the lawfare and nonstop smears from Democrats only contributed to Trump's triumph. And this is what I mentioned when I jokingly say I think they're all watching this program, because we had talked about this on Friday, that the law, and Thursday, I believe, that the lawfare, someone like Bragg, should actually be looked at from a Democrat's perspective as a villain. Bragg and Letitia James, because they just help solidify the kind of, to use their term, loyalty to Trump. If Democrats honestly sort through the debris of the election, Michael Goodwin says, they will find a slew of key issues where they were far out of step with voters. Their misguided economic policies led to sky-high inflation. They opened the border to millions of unvetted illegal migrants and adopted a radical approach to cultural issues, all of which Donald Trump seized on in his commanding victory. It certainly didn't help that Democrats fielded two weak candidates, starting with Biden. His cognitive decline, which the party tried to hide, led leaders to belatedly give him the hook. And Kamala Harris, despite spending nearly $2 billion, was mercilessly exposed as lacking the right stuff for the Oval Office. These policies and personnel issues obviously contributed to the result, and some Democrats, however, begrudgingly, are starting to come to grips with them. But there is another dimension to this race that helps explain Trump's triumph, and I don't believe any Democrat dares to touch it, at least yet. Those issues revolve around the party's decision to launch a personal war against the Republican, which featured nonstop charges that he was a racist, a fascist, and a wannabe Hitler. It was created out of whole cloth and was despicable. It was only part of the assault. The other part was the decision to weaponize the Department of Justice and state prosecutors to knock Trump out of the race by bringing a slew of criminal charges and civil suits. No former president has ever been charged with a single crime, but Democrats went full jihad and charged him with a total of 94 felonies in 4 different federal and state cases. There was also an effort to bankrupt him in New York and a plot to ban him from the ballot in a dozen blue states, a disgraceful bid that would have deprived voters of a choice. But they don't even trust their own voters, as we've seen, by not having a primary. Because think of how many people voted for Joe Biden to be the presidential nominee, and at the end of the day, he was not the presidential nominee because Nancy Pelosi and other Democrat elites decided that, no, we don't care what the voters had to say. Our own party, by the way, we don't care. At the end of the day, it's up to the elites to make that decision. And I think if Democrats would do some honest soul searching, they would start to see, like the Republicans did. The Republicans did this back in 2016, where they said, wait a minute. They keep telling us we have to pick these people because they're more moderate. We've got to pick John McCain, Bob Dole, Mitt Romney, and we keep losing and we keep losing. Well, let's go for something different. And that was, of course, Donald Trump. And I think the straw that broke the camel's back is when the mainstream media and people like Bill Kristol were saying that the only chance we have to win as Republicans is if we nominate Jeb Bush. And Republican voters had had enough. Now, will Democrats have that same reaction where they say, wait a minute, the elites keep telling us it's got to be Hillary, even though Bernie Sanders was hugely popular. Well, it's got to be Hillary, or it's got to be Biden, or it's got to be Harris. I mean, at what point do you say enough? You keep demanding picking who you want, and we keep losing. But continuing, my tongue twisted on this Monday morning. Displaying not an iota of shame, the activist Democrats carried out these unprecedented assaults, routinely accusing Trump of being a threat to democracy. It is one of the greatest cons of all time. Still, there's a lesson in defeat if the Democrats have the courage and decency to learn it. Although it is fair to say that Trump won despite this unprecedented raft of dirty tricks, it is more accurate to say that he won because of them. Polling showed that each new indictment boosted his support as the attempt to destroy him with flimsy charges backfired. You remember at one point he was even saying, I'm one charge away from being in the White House. Well, he hit that. His conviction is the only criminal case to come to trial. The Manhattan bookkeeping saga was such an erroneous miscarriage of justice that many legal experts, including some who intensely dislike Trump, said the case should not have been brought. I agree and hope the judge overseeing it, acting Manhattan Supreme Court Justice Juan Merkin, finally gets the point and dismisses the case before Trump takes office. To leave it hanging over Trump for the next 4 years would be the height of injustice, demean the presidency, and bring further shame to New York's politicized courts. Although there is no evidence, leading Democrats are ready to admit the effort to otherize Trump was a main reason for defeat. There's a noteworthy change. All the claims that Trump would be the next Hitler have suddenly vanished. The outrageous charge, including from Biden, that a Trump victory would mark the last election in American history is no longer mentioned. Armageddon apparently has been postponed. Take former chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff, General Mark Milley, who insisted that Trump is fascist to the core and the most dangerous person in the country. But last week, Milley was singing a very different tune, declaring America is going to be okay. There's a lot of waves out there, Milley continued, but this is a big, strong country, 380 million people, great institutions, great people, great workforce, and a great younger cohort of people that are going to protect America. Biden himself has come a long way. Before the 2022 midterm, he set the stage for the party's scare tactics at Independence Hall in Philadelphia, where he called Trump and his supporters a threat to our country, who represent an extremism that threatens the very foundation of our republic. Yet 2 days after the presidential election, Biden admitted that the American experiment endures and we're going to be okay. He invited Trump to the White House where, before the assembled press, he smiled, stuck out his hand and said, welcome back. Perhaps we'll hear a similar climb down from retired General John Kelly, the Trump-hating former chief of staff who tried to become the October surprise by telling the Atlantic magazine that Trump said, quote, I need the kind of generals that Hitler had, and that Trump fits the general definition of fascist. Harris, searching for a political kill shot, seized on Kelly's claim to declare that voters don't want a president of the United States that admires dictators and is a fascist. Will Harris recant when or if she returns to the White House from a vacation in Hawaii? We're going to talk about that in a little bit as well. Kelly's claim gave the media a week of feverish headlines and a chance to pretend they were engaged in serious inquiry about how bad a second Trump term would be. What is fascism? And why does Harris say Trump is a fascist? Asked the biased Associated Press, being careful to use the word as many times as possible. None of it worked, and reference to Hitler and fascism also have disappeared from the media. As we know, Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski even meeting with the person that they called essentially a wannabe Hitler. The question answers itself. Scarborough and his ilk never actually believed what they were saying. It was all just a talking point, one aimed at covering up the deficiencies of Biden and Harris. Even allowing the politics ain't beanbag. What the Democrats and the propaganda media did had serious consequences. Those who made the comparison to Hitler and Nazism bear responsibility for the spate of assassination attempts and plots against Trump. Recall that just days before the Pennsylvania attempt, where the former president was wounded, Biden said it's time to put Trump in a bullseye. After the attempt, Biden said he shouldn't have said it. But what about the lawfare assault, which was cheered by Democrats and most in the media? Did they believe any of it? Not for a minute. Beyond being justified on policy grounds, Trump's victory is the right outcome for anyone who values fair play and respect for American history. He heroically fought a corrupt empire, and voters rewarded him for it. So raise a glass to this glorious triumph, one that will be a lesson for the ages. I thought that was a very good piece. And again, seems a little bit like Michael Goodwin might be watching, frankly speaking, in his free time. And we appreciate it. Thank you, Michael Goodwin. CNN's Abby Phillips says Democrats have a bigger problem than just wokeness. We're going to talk about that in just a little bit. A few more things about Democrats. We're going to get to Trump's cabinet. It is completely, the way I understand it now, he is completely filled up in the cabinet. Everybody, every spot filled. We'll talk a little bit about that and what some are saying in the media. Some good, some bad. But what are your thoughts of the cabinet thus far? Let's take that break. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs. We are back with Frankly Speaking, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Thank you for all the waves coming in. We are running a little bit late, as you can imagine. But CNN anchor Abby Phillip said Democrats have bigger problems than just wokeness, suggesting that they have catered to the elite class for far too long. Phillip issued her diagnosis of the Democrat Party's issues when speaking at the Institute of Politics for the Harvard Kennedy School of Business last week, saying, quote, Democrats are in a place now where they have to break out of it. And I think it is a real problem. It's not as simple as wokeness or whatever. It's about people who are being incentivized to think about issues in a particular way. She said that Democrats could fall victim to groupthink if they become too circular in their lines of communication. I've observed that elites increasingly talk only to each other and come to believe that because there is a consensus among them, that the consensus is shared broadly, and there are not enough voices that are confident enough to disagree and to present alternatives. And as we as a society need to find better ways to uplift divergent voices, otherwise we will be victims of groupthink. And we've talked about this in the past as well, this idea of everyone on the left being in a bubble, right? Now, specifically in the media, where the media, you'll hear things like, everybody I know voted for Harris. How could this happen? Those in the media surrounded by people that think the same way that they do. And that's why people did, before the election, tune into MSNBC until they lost all credibility in the eyes of the left with shows like Joe Scarborough meeting with Donald Trump for ratings reasons. They lost all credibility to the left. I mean, I don't believe they had much credibility to begin with, but the left losing faith in MSNBC, their ratings plummeting. But one of the reasons why people tuned in, and it had great ratings on election night, because you want your worldview to be confirmed, right? And that's the problem. She uses the term groupthink, but that is the problem that the left is dealing with. There needs to be more courage among people to speak out and to voice diverging opinion. Otherwise, I think it's a real issue. And it's not just the Ivy League. I think it's elitism in general. Democrats ought to stop whining about social movements, which are a fact of political life. They also ought to stop implying that movements and subcultures possess power that they don't, while ignoring how wealthy donors shape the party's economic agenda. The reality is political leaders and parties will always have to manage unruly coalitions and stake out positions that are in dialogue with but distinct from interest groups. Mark Halperin said that never-Trumpers and the liberal media are stuck in a blue bubble, very similar to what Ms. Phillips was saying there. I really pleaded with everyone I knew who was a never-Trumper, someone with Trump derangement syndrome or super opposed to Donald Trump, he said. I said he's going to get 47% of the vote, and he might get 50%. But the difference between 47 and 50 is, several million Americans. You have to respect the fact that tens of millions of people are going to vote for him. And you have to be prepared for that. And some people listen to me, but most of them didn't. There's something about Donald Trump that sets them off. Now, he brings a lot of it on himself through his behavior, through his rhetoric, through his conduct. But it goes beyond that. And of course, it's particularly exasperated by what I call the dominant media, which creates this fantasy world of Joe Biden doesn't have an acuity problem. Kamala Harris should be given the nomination without any question. The open border is not an issue that people really care about. All these things. The prosecution of Donald Trump, the attempts to keep him off the ballot, the attempts to keep Bobby Kennedy off the ballot, all of these things. The failure of the president and the vice president to express outrage at the murder of American citizens by people in this country illegally. All these things add up to a blue bubble that they just can't see. The journalist added that when he asks a Trump supporter why leftists do not like Trump, the person easily explains the reasons. However, Halperin said when asked leftists why people like Trump, they're paralyzed. They can't answer the question. Interesting point there. Never had really done that, but why? Maybe that's a little bit of this soul-searching process. If Democrats would say, why is it that people overwhelmingly supported Donald Trump? But again, it's a lot of the blame game right now. Adam Schiff says the entire Democrat Party bears the blame for Harris's loss, quote, myself included. He was on Meet the Press. Asked now what Democrats got wrong, Schiff replied, I think Joe Biden's decision to step aside and pass the torch is the right decision. It gives us a chance to win, not a guarantee. I thought she would win. I thought she would win in all the battleground states. But Schiff said President-elect Donald Trump's victory boiled down to an anti-incumbent wave in the U.S. that took us out both progressives and conservatives, and our party became associated with the status quo. There was too much to overcome. I think the principal issue is the economy. And over years and decades, it has gotten more and more difficult for people working full-time to make a living. And until we resolve that challenge to the economy, we may find the presidency is easier to get than it is to keep. Welker pressed further, asking Schiff whether he agreed with Nancy Pelosi, who blamed Biden for costing the party the election. I mean, talk about slimy politics at its worst. Schiff deflected, arguing instead that Democrats have to make a new case to the American public who no longer feel the party represents their interests. Senator-elect, do you believe that President Biden bears some responsibility for staying in too long? He was asked, and Adam Schiff said, look, I think the entire Democrat Party bears a responsibility, myself included. And the former president, they mounted an effective campaign. You have to give them credit for that. The challenge we have is we need to put forward a bold vision of how we're going to move the economy forward, make the economy work for every American. To me, the existential question is if you, working hard in America, can you still earn a good living? And too many people doubt that that's a possibility. Democrats have spent the days following Trump's resounding victory, casting blame at different factions of the party for Harris's stunning loss. And now you're hearing, and we talked about it at the end of last week, this idea that, he doesn't have a mandate. Hakeem Jeffries was saying it. Joy Behar saying it. He doesn't have a mandate. He doesn't have some type of extra power because he won. I mean, keep in mind, he won not only the White House, the Republicans won the House and the Senate, and that's not a mandate. Oh, and by the way, just for good measure, winning the popular vote, which is really unheard of in recent memory for a Republican, not since I think 2004, so 20 years ago, when that was the last time a Republican won the popular vote. Now, Harris currently is on vacation in Hawaii after the election loss. She's vacationing with Second Gentleman Doug Emhoff. Harris arrived in Hawaii on Tuesday for what is expected to be a week-long trip, a break from the rigorous campaign schedule she kept over the last couple of months, but also from her duties as vice president, where she retains her tie-breaking vote as president of the Senate during the last few months of Biden's administration. The timing of the vice president's trip has generated questions, with some noting that many DNC staffers are uncertain about their futures, while others have been surprised by sudden layoffs. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre defended the Harris vacation during a Thursday briefing. The vice president has taken time off to go spend with her family. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think she deserves some time to be with her family and to have some downtime. She has worked very hard for the last 4 years, and her taking a couple of days with her family, good for her, good for her. Harris is expected to play a critical role in helping Biden push through several judges as Democrats race against the clock to top that 234 that was confirmed during Trump's first term. With the Democrats holding such a slim majority in the upper chamber, Harris broke the record last year for casting decisive votes of any vice president in history, with Democrats expecting to lean on the vice president once again in the coming weeks. There is something they want to clear the decks on. She will definitely be available for any tie votes. It is a big focus. So there you are. Now, Blinken. Oh, man, we're running late. Let me take a break. And when we come back, we'll cover a little bit more of this. We got so much more to cover. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. A comment from Ken. The article I read epitomizes the incompetency and idiocy of the New York State Democrats currently in power. Earlier this year, they passed the Advanced Clean Truck Act, which, unless they delay it, will go into effect on January 1st, 2025, just a little over a month away. This act requires that dealerships selling heavy trucks must sell at least one electric truck for every 13 diesel trucks. And you can't go so, and keep in mind that even after incentives, an electric truck costs about $110,000 more than a diesel truck. And it can't go as far on a charge as on a diesel fill-up, and New York State has installed 0 heavy truck charging stations. Dealers are saying that it will bankrupt their dealership because people will simply purchase trucks in another state. New York State geniuses hard at work. Yes, it's kind of back to that point of virtue signaling is what it really is. It's saying, look, we're trying to do something. We're doing something and not thinking about the consequences, the unintended consequences. Blinken, Representative Darrell Issa, took aim at the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, after it was reported, have you heard about this, that the State Department held therapy sessions for employees who were upset by President-elect Trump's election victory. Quote, I'm concerned that the department is catering to federal employees who are personally devastated by the normal functioning of American democracy through the provision of government-funded mental health counseling because Kamala Harris was not elected president of the United States, the letter says. The letter comes after a Free Beacon report earlier this month that detailed 2 alleged therapy sessions that were held at the State Department after Trump's victory, with sources telling the outlet that one such instance amounted to an information cry session. In another instance, an email went out to agency employees and touted a separate insightful webinar where we delve into the effective stress management techniques to help you navigate these challenging times after Trump's victory. Change is a constant in our lives, but it often brings about stress and uncertainty, the email said. Join us for an insightful webinar where we delve into effective stress management techniques to help you navigate these challenging times. This session will provide tips and practical strategies for managing stress and maintaining your well-being. In his letter to Blinken, Darrell Issa argued that the reported sessions were disturbing and that a nonpartisan government official should not be suffering a personal meltdown over the result of a free and fair election. While the Republican lawmaker acknowledged that the mental health of the agency's employees was important, he questioned the use of taxpayer dollars to counsel those upset about the election, demanding answers on how many sessions have been conducted and how many more were planned and how much the sessions are costing the department. Yes, the State Department hosting in-house therapy for those affected by the election of Donald J. Trump. Now, Trump, no matter what the media is telling you, if you look at the polls, Trump is actually getting high marks for his transition and who he is selecting. Now, I know the media is in a tizzy, not liking his chosen cabinet members, but most Americans approve of Donald Trump's handling of his administration's transition back into the White House and are bullish about the next 4 years. A sizable 59% of Americans support his moves so far as he angles to stack up his next administration with, quote, disruptors, while 41% disapprove. That's a pretty impressive number. 59% approving of the decisions he's making thus far. Trump rounded out his cabinet selections last week, though he will still need to navigate the Senate confirmation process to officially get them on his team. Some are saying that it might be a tough go with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and with Pete Hegseth. But Health and Human Services Secretary designate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. drew the most positive reaction from poll respondents, with 47% ranking him as a good pick compared to 34% saying he was not good. Very interesting that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Well, I said this was very anecdotal, but I thought it was very interesting when people reached out to me saying that what finally put them over the edge to vote for Trump, even though they weren't necessarily a Trump fan, was the fact that he had people around him like Robert F. Kennedy, like Elon Musk, like Tulsi Gabbard. So that's interesting that Robert F. Kennedy drew the most positive reaction from poll respondents, with 47% ranking him as a good pick. Secretary of State designate Marco Rubio garnered 44% good to 25% not good. Director of National Intelligence designate Tulsi Gabbard scored 36 to 27, and Defense Secretary nominee Pete Hegseth notched 33 to 28. The least favorable of the cabinet picks was former Representative Matt Gaetz. He nabbed a 30% good, a 38% not good rating. Many of Trump's picks have come under fire in the media since being announced. Kennedy's past skepticism of vaccine safety standards has drawn blowback from health experts, and Gabbard's meeting with Syrian leader Bashar al-Assad in 2017 has sparked concern from the intelligence community. Additionally, Hegseth has faced resurfaced sexual assault allegations that he has denied, but those various controversies appear to have been limited the effect on public opinion. Trump has openly floated the possibility of trying to bypass the at times cumbersome Senate confirmation process. But 76% of respondents want confirmation hearings for his picks. More than half, 55% of even Republicans said they want the hearings as well. All right, we got to take a short break. I see we've got some comments coming in. We'll get to those. When we come back, we are going to talk about Marjorie Taylor Greene. She's targeting NPR's budget. It's very interesting when you look at public radio or public television, how much money that they get from you and me, and we know that there is a clear bias. If you've listened for even a few moments, you'll see the bias. You'll hear the bias on NPR, and on PBS you'll see it as well. So we're going to talk about what Marjorie Taylor Greene has to say about NPR now that she's a part of Musk's and Ramaswamy's Doge group. We're also going to talk a little bit about some of Trump's picks here. As I mentioned earlier, the New York Post editorial board believes that Trump's pick in the Labor Department was, as they call it, a total turkey. What is your thoughts? And we'll also talk a little bit about the media's reaction to some of Trump's picks. That's when we come back. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back. Thank you again to Boss Security and Horseheads. Contact them for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking as we broadcast live from the Heselson studio. Comment from a viewer. Get the list of whoever attended the State Department therapy sessions. This is a good starting point of who definitely needs to find a new job and be removed. Sometimes they just can't see past the end of their nose. Yeah, they made it a little bit easier on Musk and Ramaswamy with Doge to look at some of the people that may not be considered essential employees. Now, Marjorie Taylor Greene is targeting the NPR's budget, speaking of Doge. Firebrand, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, has wasted no time breaking out the red pen as she gears up to head a new House subcommittee dedicated to finding and eradicating wasteful spending, and is already rattling her saber at liberal tote bag dispensing National Public Radio. Kentucky Republican James Comer, who was tasked with setting up the new Department of Government Efficiency, the brainchild of Trump appointees Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, tapped Greene to lead a House panel to fuel the effort. Speaking on Fox News' Sunday Morning Futures, she talked about her impending new role. Greene said Doge will be combating federal coffers for budgetary inefficiencies across the board. We'll be looking at everything from government-funded media programs like NPR that spread nothing but Democrat propaganda. We'll be going into grant programs that fund things like toilets in Africa and elsewhere. This was on, she was talking to Maria Bartiromo. All kinds of programs that don't help the American people. I want to talk to the people of the Pentagon and ask ask them why they can't find billions of dollars every single year and why they fail their audit. I'd like to have them come over before our committee and explain why they deserve federal dollars if they're going to harbor illegal criminal aliens in their states and the cities. We don't care about people's feelings. We're going to be searching for the facts, and we're going to be verifying if this is worth spending the American people's hard-earned tax dollars on. Now, Donald Trump, he had a slew of people he picked over the weekend. My email was just constant. He nominated Scott Turner from Texas as the Secretary of the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development. Scott is an NFL veteran who, during Trump's first term, served as the first executive director of the White House Opportunity and Revitalization Council, helping to lead an unprecedented effort that transformed our country's most distressed communities. Those efforts, working together with former HUD Secretary Ben Carson, were maximized by Scott's guidance in overseeing 16 federal agencies, which implemented more than 200 policy actions furthering economic development. Under Scott's leadership, Opportunity Zones received about $50 billion in private investments. He also nominated Marty Makary to the FDA commissioner. FDA has lost the trust of Americans, said Donald Trump, and has lost sight of its primary goal as a regulator. The agency needs Dr. Marty Makary a highly respected Johns Hopkins surgical oncologist and health policy expert to course correct and refocus the agency. Also, he nominated former Congressman Dr. Dave Weldon for director of the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. He announced that Alex Wong will be appointed assistant to the president and principal deputy national security advisor, and Dr. Sebastian Gorka as deputy assistant to the president and senior director to counterterrorism. Yes, Sebastian Gorka was very prominent in Trump's last go-around as president back in 2016. And he also announced that Dr. Janet Niswat will be nation's doctor and the United States Surgeon General. Dr. Niswat is a double board certified medical doctor with an unwavering commitment to serving and treating thousands of American lives, said the president-elect, and also adding that he nominated Congresswoman Lori Chavez DeRemer from the great state of Oregon as United States Secretary of Labor. We're going to talk about her in just a moment. And nominated Russell Thurlow Vogt from the great state of Virginia as the director of the United States Office of Management and Budget, or OMB. And finally, I think this is our last one, Donald Trump releasing a statement that he nominated Scott Bessent to serve as the 79th Secretary of the Treasury of the United States. He is widely respected as one of the world's foremost international investors and geopolitical and economic strategists. Scott's story, according to Donald J. Trump, is that of the American dream. Now, I'd mentioned earlier in the program that the New York Post believes that Representative Lori Chavez DeRemer is, quote, a total turkey to run his labor department. The Oregon Republican in name just lost her bid for re-election after a single term in the House, where she routinely towed the big labor line, co-sponsoring the Radical PRO Act and opposing school choice, a cause Trump has fervently embraced. If she had her way, she'd eliminate right-to-work laws, which guarantees no one can be forced as a condition of employment to join or pay dues or fees to a labor union in 27 states, nearly all of which voted for Trump. That's why she was pushed by Teamster President Sean O'Brien, who spoke at the GOP convention and whose union went no endorsement in the president's race, and why she has the enthusiastic support of Randy Weingarten and her fellow teacher union bosses who went all out seeking Trump's defeat. This is a horrible pick. Trump won over the working class because he delivered rising wages in his first term, while President Joe Biden's big labor-loving policies slammed workers on his term. For all the romantic history and moral posturing, labor unions in America today are overwhelmingly about preserving their leaders' power and their members' perks at the expense of everyone else. They're now a tiny and shrinking force in most of the private sector, but a huge and growing bane in government. Among other ill influence, Chavez DeRemer will be another barrier to the work of Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy in the Department of Government Efficiency, and indeed to Trump's own push to rid the federal government of the highly politicized deep state operatives who did so much to hobble him in his first term. And sadly, this is one pick Senate Republicans can't save him from. Democrat senators will rush to vote her in. They know an ally when they see one. We get that Trump is determined to not be a captive of old school GOP orthodoxy and wants to symbolize his affection for working Americans. But he also clearly prizes loyalty, and Lori Chavez DeRemer's loyalties clearly reside with the president-elect's enemies. We hope he belatedly realizes that where he really needs her is somewhere she could do no harm, say as ambassador to Burma, even if Turkey would be more appropriate. Your thoughts on that selection? We've got more to talk about with Trump's cabinet. Axios saying that it is a liberal cabinet. We'll talk about that when we come back. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox. We will be right back. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking as we broadcast live from the Hesselson's studio. Axios is suggesting that Trump's cabinet is quote-unquote liberal. Lost in the noise of Trump's most controversial picks is the simple, undebatable fact that this might be the most ideologically diverse cabinet of modern times. As Axios' Zachary Basu said, Trump's cabinet is increasingly resembling a European-style coalition government, staffed with a dizzying array of ideological rivals united for now by a grand MAGA vision. The team represents the Trump worldview. Traditional conservatism is dead, and its biggest lifelong advocates neutered to the point of irrelevance. A Trump transition source told Axios, most of the picks are a version of Trump in their thinking and approach. They're fearless disruptors who can walk into these buildings, and I know they have a mandate for reform and change. Trump's earlier hostile takeover of the Republican establishment is now morphing into a fast-forward hostile takeover of the federal bureaucracy. Trump insiders tell us that they're confident RFK will get confirmed, possibly with the help of at least one Democrat senator. In just under a decade, Trump, once a donor to Democrats, has transformed the GOP of George W. Bush, John McCain, and Mitt Romney into a populist party with radically different views on trade, immigration, and spending. In policy, tone, and personnel, this is the MAGA party, not a GOP that any of the party's past legends would recognize. Quote, the GOP establishment is now Trump's team of populists. A behind-the-scenes Republican power broker told us the old Bush establishment are the outsiders. And a phenomenon was apparently made clear when Scott Bessent, bringing his deep knowledge of bond and currency markets and a close relationship with Trump, as well as a surprising connection to hedge fund manager. Yes, this has got a lot of people concerned. George Soros, a mega donor to liberal causes, and boogeyman to the political right. But we're not going to go through each pick that Trump has made. But Donald Trump Jr. is helping his father pick the most controversial cabinet of modern times, says Reuters. So the most liberal, now we hear the most controversial. Don Jr. has emerged as the most influential Trump family member in the transition as the president-elect builds the most controversial cabinet in modern U.S. history, according to a half dozen sources with knowledge of his role, elevating inexperienced loyalists over more qualified candidates for top positions in his administration. Trump, who fiercely prizes loyalty, has long relied on family members for political advice, but which relative has his ear is known to vary. This time is Don Jr., who has helped cabinet contenders sink or rise to the forefront, from championing J.D. Vance. He was the one that picked J.D. Vance, which was ultimately a very good move. I think Donald Trump made the right decision there. I think many of us at first, not overly familiar with him, wondering, we all had someone that we kind of liked in that position. But J.D. Vance ultimately, I think, doing great work for the Trump campaign, giving those amazing rallies where he would take so many questions from the press. But that was Don Jr.'s pick, even saying after the debate something like, see, I told you so, something to that extent. The New York Times is saying behind Schumer's silence on Trump's picks, a bid to spotlight GOP divides. The Senate Majority Leader is staying out of Republican turmoil over the more contentious picks for strategic reasons. Senator Chuck Schumer, the New York Democrat and Majority Leader for a few more weeks, is not known for keeping his thoughts to himself, but he has been uncharacteristically restrained about offering up his view on even the most eyebrow-raising potential Trump administration nominees. We're going to wait and see what happens in each of these instances before commenting, Schumer said. Passing up a television camera-ready opportunity he would normally grab to slip a knife into the president-elect's cabinet picks, he is keeping quiet for a reason. It's not because he does not have an opinion on President-elect Donald Trump's administration in the making, with some Republicans raising their own profound concerns about Trump's ethically and legally challenged choices, such as Matt Gaetz and Pete Hegseth. Why get in the way of the intra-party hand-wringing is what the thought is coming from Schumer. Oh, boy, we got to take a break. Mr. Schumer does not want Republicans to be able to paint him as the face of the opposition, a prospect that would help rally the GOP around Trump's choices. His colleagues endorse it as the right move. I think this is a moment for Republicans to debate among themselves, said Chris Van Hollen. Why get in the middle of a food fight? All right. We've got a couple other comments. Oh, look at these waves coming in right at the end. All right, we got to take a short break, and then we're going to wrap up today's edition of Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. So stay with us. We'll be right back. And we are back. Thank you again to Boss Security and Horses for bringing us the roof cam. Visit them today for all your business and home security needs. We are broadcasting live from the Heselson studio. A comment from a viewer before we head out the door here. Good morning, Frank. Well, hey, good morning. He can't afford to get it wrong, and I'm sure by now he knows that, meaning Trump and his picks. His picks have to be spot on, no mistakes. Fair, but no mistakes. They didn't play fair, and we know how well that worked out. Yes, back in 2016, a lot of criticism of who he ultimately picked, so we're seeing perhaps a different tact, and I think it is good to have the idea of loyalty, even though the media presents it as such a negative. Tammy Duckworth, a Democrat from Illinois, said on State of the Union on CNN that Tulsi Gabbard has been compromised, in her opinion. Well, I think she's compromised. I think by going to Syria and basically backing, a brutal dictator there, Russian-controlled media called her a Russian asset. So I do think that we have a real deep concern whether or not she's a compromised person. The U.S. intelligence community has identified her as having troubling relationships with American foes. So my worry is that she couldn't pass a background check. So she has no intelligence background whatsoever. When she was in Iraq, she was a medical records clerk, A4, below the rank of sergeant. Her second deployment was actually to Kuwait Naval Base, where she only spent 3 months training the Kuwait military. I don't know any of the intelligence work that she has done. So she, in terms of the intelligence community, very unqualified. Plus, she is potentially compromised and could be and has in their questions about whether or not she is now a Russian asset. So that is now the talking point going after Tulsi Gabbard. Senator Mark Wayne Mullen said similar. Oh, no, not similar. Excuse me. She defending Tulsi Gabbard, saying, "I think it's dangerous." Tammy, listen, let me ask you this. This was Dana Bash asked a question. I know you listened to what Senator Duckworth said in describing Donald Trump's pick to Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. She called her compromised, someone who is wholly backing and supportive of Putin. What do you make of that? Mullen's saying, I think it's dangerous. Tammy, listen, I got a lot of respect for Tammy, and I've known her for years. We served together in the House, but for her to say ridiculous and outright dangerous words like that is wrong. You got to keep in mind, Tulsi Gabbard is still a lieutenant colonel in the United States Army. She commands a reserve unit here in Oklahoma and Missouri. If she was compromised, if she wasn't able to pass a background check, if she wasn't able to do her job, still she wouldn't be in the Army. So Tammy is absolutely dead wrong on this, and she should react to those words. This is the most dangerous thing she could say, that a United States lieutenant colonel in the United States Army is compromised and is an asset of Russia. It is actually sad to hear her say that. When I heard her say that, I thought, I wonder if this is political because she's upset with Tulsi Gabbard leaving the Democrat Party because they went woke, because I know they actually got along when they were in the House. She knows Tulsi Gabbard. She knows her heart. She has a heart to serve. And so I think that's probably more politically motivated than actually has any truth to it. There's no reason why the Democrats are going after her other than the fact that they're upset that she left their woke party. Democrat New York Representative Tom Suozzi advised Americans to calm down over Trump's cabinet picks. Let's look at what they're proposing to do and their background, and let the Senate go through their process of vetting these candidates so they can decide whether or not to give the advice and consent to these appointments. I want to tell everybody, calm down. Trump's determination to install controversial picks faces the next test, says Stephen Collinson. His determination, it's only controversial because the media uses the term controversial. Donald Trump's Senate allies are racing to defend Tulsi Gabbard, his pick to lead U.S. intelligence services, in what could become the next test of the president-elect's bid to install provocative nominees and of any Republican appetite to stop them. Gabbard and other contentious Trump pick, Pete Hegseth, who has been tapped to lead the Defense Department, came under sharpened scrutiny Sunday as the spotlight shifted from Matt Gaetz, Trump's toppled choice to be Attorney General. All right. Victor Davis Hanson, we are out of time, said another name for the Trump revolution, other than just make America great again, return to sanity. So another name for the Trump counter-revolution is a simple return to sanity. And Carol Roth saying that Democrats can't buy anything like Trump's genuine authenticity. Despite having vast wealth, Trump does not portray himself as an elite looking down on Americans who have struggled over the past 3 3/4 years. His messaging is that he wants to fight the elite and make America great for all Americans. That's what Americans wanted, and the resounding votes show that no matter how the Democrats try to spin it. But Tim Stanley from The Telegraph says Trump's America reminds us of Rome in decline. All right, we're out of time for today's edition of Frankly Speaking. Thank you to everybody who joined us. We'll be back tomorrow morning, starting at 6 a.m. for Frankly Speaking, only on WYDC TV, Big Fox. I look forward to it. All right, we'll see you then.